Hello everyone! Today we're going to look at Galak-Z, which is an interesting little thing made by 17-bit, and for those of you who don't know, 17-bit are the guys behind Skulls of the Shogun, that light strategy game that ended up being quite successful because it was popular and very playable on mobile devices, and it's a really nice, light, turn-based strategy game. They went on to develop this. This is a space shooter, very arcadey in nature, and it has a lot of callbacks to the 70s and 80s anime and other arcade games that were popular at the time, and it kind of oozes that style in every way it can. Even the 17-bit logo up there is in that style, the actual game logo is in the style, even the pause menu is an old VHS with the phone order sounds, which is great. And I would also say you really need to look at the trading cards for this game. Whether or not you're actually interested in Steam cards isn't important. Just go look them up because they're awesome. If you zoom in on the trading cards, what they are is a digital render of an old action figure box. Instead of trading cards, they're like digital action figures, old like 80s Gundam box looking things. It's awesome. Anyway, so the way the game works is generally you have two different modes, and arcade is a little easier because you are allowed to restart from the beginning of a mission if you die, whereas rogue mode, as it states, you can't. You die and you're done for unless you have enough of these things called crash coins in order to revive yourself, but that has other problems as well, which we'll talk about. I've been playing on arcade because I'm a filthy casual and because I wanted to actually get far enough to film for this, because the game's actually quite difficult, but I plan on playing through every chapter on Rogue afterward now that I'm kind of used to the controls. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's very, very solid, so I'm going to resume from where I am. You start on this very nice ship in space called the Exelios, and you will be given random missions. The missions are different after the tutorial every time, with different layouts and different objectives, even in the same actual mission number. Say if you die and have to redo the mission, it'll probably be different the next time. But generally the 5th missions in every sector are a boss fight, so those are a little more scripted. Here we are, as you can see, the art style is pretty great already. And now I've got to go find this thing called a data cube. And we're just going to go into the mission now, and when you start, you will be given an opportunity to spin salvage that you obtain from chests and killing enemies at a shop, and the shop is used mostly always at the beginning of a mission. You can find this guy in mission, but he's not always in an easy to locate area, so it's more reliable to just buy what you can from the beginning. And these will affect your ship in a variety of ways. These are all the ones that I currently have equipped, or at least have the ability to equip, depending. And I can then spend some salvage to get other stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and get this repair kit because health is good. And let's see, that is kind of nice, but it really decreases your fire rate a lot. And that's nice as well, but I can't afford that now that I spent on that. That was smart. That actually sounds very useful. Let's do that. Okay, so you are allowed to equip your ship here with the various laser upgrades you want and to kind of make your main ship weapon a bit different. So I like the assault muzzle. It's a smaller sort of cone of fire, but it has a nice fire rate and the shots actually go faster, so it's easier to hit things with. I'm also using the pellet particles, which expand, and a shotgun-like 3 blast fire mode with these plasma bullets that can set enemies on fire, and they bounce. So you'll start off with a pretty basic shot, but it very quickly gets into something a little more ridiculous as you get more and more upgrades for it, and you end up being quite powerful. So let's go on. And it may, oh gosh, all of the loading messages, by the way, are references to either old anime or old, like, arcade cabinet loading messages. Even when you actually start up the game, it is an old arcade cabinet, like, RAM initialize screen. The game is pretty serious about its style.
Well, I take a hacksaw and I hack it in half.
You're joking?
I can't reveal all my secrets.
Yes, the game has a lot of voice acting. You'll hear a lot of it during this mission. I try not to talk too much over it if I can, but it's going to be difficult because there's a lot of it. The voice acting is phenomenal. The main character and the other character, Beam, that is sort of your helper, they both have fantastic voice acting, and they have that cheesy 80s anime style. It's pretty great. They really nailed the actual style down very, very well. So if we get into it, There we go. You can see, first of all, that the art style is absolutely wonderful. It is very, very pretty, kind of graphic novel-esque looking. It's got a really, really nice style. All the particle effects and impacts are very pretty as well. And you'll even see a lot of kind of little details, like smoke rising off of things, the way your thruster works, and actually as it heats up, it builds up this white ball behind you, stuff like that. And that makes the game... It all adds up to a very pretty looking game with a lot of style in it as well. Like I said, the game takes its style very seriously. The devs knew exactly what they wanted to make when it came to... Like, they knew how to make a kind of callback to cheesy 80s anime and stuff like that, and they did it fantastically. So the missions get pretty hard. The first chapter isn't too difficult, especially once you get used to the controls and all that. Second chapter on, things get fairly challenging, because you'll be fighting a variety of different kinds of enemies, and there's actually a faction system, and the more factions are introduced, the tougher the game gets, because the factions get pretty tough, and they get a lot more complicated ship types with more powerful weapons and defenses that you need to strategize quite a bit to take them out, and they also approach you in much larger numbers, which means that you're going to have to be zipping around all over the place to even survive by the later levels. And the actual control scheme is pretty sublime. It works very, very well. You have really good control of your momentum as far as a ship goes. It uses, you know, the kind of Newtonian physics, so you boost around everywhere, and even when you stop boosting, you still can float all around the place. You have reverse thrusters to back up. You can stop in mid-flight pretty quickly, which is nice, and you have an actual boost function that builds up heat, so you can't use it for too long at a time. But it's quite nice. You also get a couple of extra features, like this juke button, which I'll show you. Hang on, hang on. Oh, he totally missed. Looks like he's having some trouble hitting me. See if we can juke it. Juke it, juke it. No, he's gonna die. So this is the juke system right here. You do a nice little somersault, and that allows you to avoid shots and small projectiles coming your way. But it obviously has a bit of a cooldown. You can't just spam it constantly. Like if I... You can see you can't do it like just over and over and over again in really fast succession. You have to give it a bit of a second. So avoiding multiple large volleys from multiple directions means you're going to have to move around a lot, and you can't simply rely on the juke to always be there when you need it. But it is a really nice function. And you also have a side strafing function that takes a bit of getting used to, because it keeps your momentum in whatever direction you are moving, which means... Say if I wanted to if I was targeting something down here and wanted to rotate around it counterclockwise, I'd have to boost this way first, then face it and hold the strafe button. And the other way around. That means, basically, you are expected to do a lot of fine adjustments to your movement to avoid hazards, to get your strafe directions correct and things like that. You're basically doing a lot of zipping around in three-dimensional space, essentially, is almost what it feels like. It's a 2D game, obviously, but the way you have to move around is pretty complex, and that's where the control scheme actually comes into its own, because it's so well developed that it's an absolute joy to play the game. It is really, really fast-paced in terms of the actual combat, and you'll be moving around a lot by the later levels, because you'll have a lot of enemies at once, and you can't just stay still and rely on the juke to avoid every shot, because there's just simply too many. And what it eventually will come down to is kind of boosting around arenas and things, trying not to take too many shots, like I'm doing right now, but I was able to avoid that, and actually enable yourself to kill all of the enemies in a quick sequence without losing your shields too many times. And it makes the control scheme very enjoyable. I really like what they did. So the health system is interesting. You have 2 shields, as you can, well, you start with 2 shields, you can get more, but your shields will deplete from hits, and different types of hits can end up taking different amounts of shield energy away. Like some of the large mech enemies can actually take your entire shield bank out if you're not careful. But your shields will regen after a short period of no damage. But in the middle of combat, that short period can suddenly feel very, very long. Oh god, these are Void Raiders, by the way. They're very cheesy, but very effective at what they do. Oh god. And you have a health bar that is more permanent and doesn't recharge on its own. Once your shields, of course, are depleted, your health bar will start taking damage instead. And this is pretty tough. You start with 4, and that's not very many, you know, only being able to take basically about 6 hits before you die. And what this means is you're often going to be buying and trying to find those repair pods like this one over here, or just spending 200 salvage on the shop's repair, but those only repair 1 space at a time as well, so it's not particularly cost effective, and you can usually only buy 1 per visit to the shop, so it's not like you can just spam the buy button with a bunch of salvage and get up to full health again. Although you can find temporary shield and temporary hull, which are like a maximum increase, but they deplete once they're gone. So a temporary shield would give me 3 shield, technically, but once all of my shields are actually depleted for the first time after buying it, I'll go back down to 2 max again.
Man, I hate bugs.
Oh god. So let's talk about the factions. There are multiple factions in the game. The main ones you'll be experiencing for a while are the Imperials, which are the kind of blue ships. They're pretty smart with their fighting, and they can come in quite a variety of forms, even some mech-type ships and things like that that often prove to be quite challenging if you're not careful, because the larger ships can fire pretty accurate volleys of bullets at you, and their mech-type ships are very fast and very powerful. Now, this green faction right here are space bugs, pretty much. Oh, and here's some of the tougher Imperial ships. Now, the space bugs don't have shields, obviously, like normal ships, but they have various biological weapons. They tend to rush at you and bite you. They're very quick in general, and they can be a pain to deal with because they have a lot of health. And they're often quite fast and a bit unpredictable in their behavior. There are also those crazy yellow guys that you saw. There's some sort of hydralisk over there. And they are called Void Raiders, and they're a bit insane. They're pretty crazy, but they have these kind of junker-like ships that are often a bit strangely put together and kind of weird, but they also have pretty potent shields and a lot of powerful weapons and things, like crazy shotgun-like effects. They can rush towards you and just hit you really hard very quickly. You gotta be careful about them. You also will see that there's a lot of indoor space here, and there's a lot of hazards along the way. Like these things, for instance, if I run into them, will instantly blow my shields. So I need to be very careful. But as you saw earlier, I actually deliberately targeted them next to those bigger Imperial ships to blow their shields, because they don't only affect you, they affect enemies as well. And like these things, for instance, they slow you down as they attach to your ship. So as you can see here, even boosting, I'm pretty slow. There are those red spikes along the walls that can be pretty potent. And there are these things that actually shoot spikes around. And again, all of these can be used against you or against the enemy if you target them well enough. And there are other types of environments you'll go into, like these kind of industrial foundry-like things and stuff that can have explosive barrels, big metal crates around and things like that, that will make you kind of have other hazards to watch out for. But are you ready for this? One of the main features of the game? You can transform into a mech with a laser katana, because of course you can. And this is something you'll get at the beginning of the 2nd season. Every chapter is actually called a season, of course, because, you know, anime. The mech form is really quite something. It has basically a Gundam beam saber. It's a sort of laser katana that you can charge up and do a heavy dashing attack with. I actually have an upgrade for it that makes it deal like double damage as well. Kaboom! You also have this portable shield here to help you avoid shots a little better, which I just failed miserably at, but it will eventually break and you'll have to let it recharge. And that's in addition to your normal shields. You can also do some other really fun stuff, like deflecting bullets with a properly timed shield, or hitting them with your beam saber like that. Oh god. And you can grab things and throw them around, and things include the ships themselves. I can grab the ship and just punch the crap out of it until it explodes, which is amazing. Or I could, for instance, boost around, grab it, and throw it into that spiked plant there.
Oh, well played. This is bad.
There we go. And that shows you how mobile the combat actually is. The combat comes into its own when you get the mech transformation, and how mobile you have to be and how quickly you have to react to things changes significantly once you have this mech, because you'll be doing a lot more movement. Okay.
Yes.
As you can see, you can also find various chests around containing salvage, supplies, health kits, and upgrades and blueprints. Alright, so I got the cube, and now I gotta take it back to the warp beacon. So, basically, this game is an absolute joy to play. It is incredibly fun, it has a lot of gameplay variety, and the actual act of building up your ship/mech with different items and things that you get and upgrades is a very good feeling indeed, and it's very well done. The controls are absolutely sublime, they are very smooth, very responsive, and take a bit of time to learn, but that's not because they're clunky or anything, that's just because the actual movement is really required for you to actually be any good at the game, so you have to learn to move around a lot. Now, I'm actually going to buy another repair kit here. There we go. And this actually somewhat reminds me of a 2D Zone of the Enders in the way that this mech feels, to be honest, which is a good thing, because I love ZOE. And the control scheme also works very well with the keyboard and mouse. Now, that's something that people might not expect. I'm actually using a controller right now, but the keyboard and mouse controls are actually very good, and I wouldn't, like some people might expect, especially some sort of arcadey space shooter type game, that the KB&M controls would be very poor, that you basically would need a controller for it to control well at all. That is not the case. It controls very well with the controller, but especially with a little tweaking and getting used to, the keyboard and mouse controls are just as good. You can map strafing to the A and D keys, and your kind of movement to the mouse is normally how it works. You can do a lot with the controls. They're fully rebindable, so they're pretty effective actually at... Yes, I just threw a giant asteroid at a robot. They're effective at being very, very smooth and responsive, pretty much no matter what you're using. So I would say it's very much personal preference. I wouldn't say that either of the control methods is really better than the other, which is surprising because it could have easily been that way, and people really probably wouldn't have complained that much because it's kind of expected with a game in this genre that the keyboard and mouse controls would be a bit of an afterthought or not as good, but that's not the case at all. Yeah. Man, that's fun. So yeah, the game is just incredibly fun, and I would highly recommend it to everyone who has any sort of passing interest in this kind of thing. The controls are so good that it's really hard not to just have a lot of fun zooming around and throwing giant rocks at other robots, because what else would you want to do? The game is very, very smooth in how it runs as well. It's optimized very well. It runs at a solid 60 frames per second for me at all times, which is good, because the kind of reaction speed required in the heavier fights and things like that is definitely, definitely high up there. And the game demands a lot of focus from you at the higher levels of play, because you will be required to do a lot of quick reactions and dodge a lot of bullets, and just move around in general quite quickly. Ugh.
Taking Imperial fire.
Whew. Should have dodged that, but I didn't. It slows down for you a little bit to help you dodge a mech's attack once one is about to escape from a grab, but it doesn't always work out because I didn't quite have the reaction speed for that one. But yeah, it's such an enjoyable experience that I can't really not recommend it. It is $20 right now on Steam. $20 is not a lot for the amount of content you're getting, and I can promise you that. It is 5 seasons with 5 missions each, and the seasons are very replayable, not only because of the variety and equipment that you can find and equip, but because the missions are procedurally generated and are different every single time.
Beam, I'm here.
Except for the boss missions, which are bosses, so I'm sure they're fairly difficult. In fact, I'll just show you the boss at the end of the video here, because I'm about to find one. The voice acting is very, very good, and it has the style you would expect of cheesy 80s anime and kind of arcade shooter style voice actors, but they do their jobs very well. And it's a joy to listen to, actually, because they're pretty passionate about what they're making, clearly. They put a lot of love and attention and care into making this game, and it shows in pretty much every aspect of it that it is pretty phenomenal, actually. So...
Great news. We're within striking distance of Akamoto.
Right, I've been waiting for this.
Akamoto's within an escape pod. We also detect significant presence of Imperials.
Right.
Imperials?
He has limited communications, but we think he's unharmed. You'll need to find him and bring him back.
Roger. Bravely defeat some Imperials and rescue my greatest hero, the Admiral Akamoto. Be cool, A-Tech. This is just a normal day. It's like any other.
Seriously, the delivery of all the voice lines and everything is spot on. So, I need as much health as possible. And we'll go ahead and get the Hellfire payload for our missiles. And maybe... good. A temp shield. That'll be fine. And that's pretty... Do I want the blast... I think I kind of do want the huge projectiles when it comes with having the blast fire. That seems nice. Alright. Let's see what this mission's like really quick. Arming emergency lights, So yeah, that's pretty much my conclusion on this game, is that there's so much love and attention that's been put into making it, it's very hard for me not to appreciate it. I mean, look at that. Even the opening mission splash screens have like a classic anime episodic feel to them, with silly procedural titles and even a byline. Oh god. It's great. It is absolutely great. And for 20 bucks, I can't recommend it any more than I have already, pretty much. I can't possibly tell you how much fun I've actually had with it, because it has a lot of replay value in that it's difficult, but it isn't unfair. Its difficulty comes from just the pure joy of very high-speed, high-dodge action battle type systems, and not any kind of artificial nonsense.
Yeah, I don't think he heard you.
Trying again. Copy that, SOS. This is the Axelios. Akamoto, respond.
Escape pod PSN quadrant 4520X, 5245Z, 6235X. Any Imperials attempting rescue will...
Shields out.
Yeah.
Taking damage. Damn you and your empire.
There we go. We're good. So yeah, this has been Galak-Z. It is a very, very good, absolutely fantastic, in fact, effort to create an older style of throwback with new school mechanics and very, very solid gameplay, and they have done just that. It doesn't need to stand on like nostalgia or anything like that, because it is so well made, but yet it still can stand on its kind of nostalgia factor if required, because it does it very well. And that's pretty much how I feel about the entire game. That design philosophy seems to be pretty much the entire way through the game, and I'm very happy with that, I think. Okay, just kind of zipping around the levels and like high-speed killing everything is very, very enjoyable. The boss fights are pretty intense and they get difficult, but they have the kind of classic arcade patterns and things that you can learn if you take the time to do so. And I was kind of hoping that I would be able to show you one for the end of the video, but I'm not sure how long it'll actually take me to get there. I'm thinking once I reach the escape pod and stuff, we'll actually see a boss, but I'm not sure yet. The bosses are pretty large as well. The first boss was this giant space serpentine evil worm thing called White Tusk that was pretty difficult actually, and had a lot of the kind of classic style of rushing space centipede attack things that were difficult to deal with unless you got really used to the controls by then. So the first boss is really a learning check of how used to the control scheme you are. And that's fine, that's kind of to be expected, and it works pretty well, so... So yeah, if you are interested at all, feel free to check out the description below this video for a link to the Steam page to Galak-Z by 17-bit. And I also might do a little bit of a giveaway. If I do one, I'll link it in the description, because the devs were actually nice enough to give me multiple keys for this game, and I would like to have other people experience it. Oh god! That was a poor decision, as it turns out. So we'll see what happens. And thanks for watching, everyone. Let me see if I can get to the boss really quick before I stop, because I'm almost there.
Good
almost to the pod if I don't die. Might as well talk about the death system, I suppose, by the way. Dying in this mode in arcade mode, will make you restart from the ship before you actually began the mission. And what that means is any upgrades and stuff that you collected during that mission will be lost, and you'll have to, try and find them again. But of course, they won't be in the same place necessarily, or even be the same upgrades, because the mission is likely to be a different one. You also have the Rogue mode, which means that dying will be the end of your career, basically, and the saving, basically, only happens at the beginning of each season, so you'll have to beat all 5 episodes of a season without dying in order to progress with Rogue mode. It's difficult, but that's very clearly the way the game is meant to be played. The game even tells you so. Because of the sort of procedural nature of the missions and the upgrades and stuff, that's very clearly how the game is actually meant to work. But the arcade mode is there for those of us who are massive casuals who need to actually progress to make a YouTube video. Because the game is difficult and it was taking me a minute to get used to it, but I definitely want to go through on Rogue mode now that I've gotten used to it. And when you when you die on Rogue mode, of course you lose all of the upgrades you're currently holding. But one thing to be said is, if you find blueprints at all, those are kept, no matter what.
Beam, the escape pod's empty. Where's Akamoto?
No.
Right. I'm not detecting any signs of life inside. This must be a decoy.
That's not good.
I'm picking up a faint signal from the pod's transponder. I can run a parabolic trace that will boost the signal with your ship's long-range transmitter. Just stay near the pod for a few seconds while I run the trace.
Alright, I got it. But yes, blueprints are always kept. They actually determine what's for sale in the shop, so blueprints are kept between plays. And the way the crash coin system works, I should also explain. Those little purple symbols up there, those are crash coins. They are rare drops from enemies, and I think it seems like you can only get 5. If you have 5, they don't drop anymore. It will take 5 of them in Rogue mode to restart a mission. So if you're in Rogue mode and you die and you have 5 crash coins, you don't necessarily have to start from the very beginning of the season anymore. If you happen to have the max number, you can in fact restart from the from the beginning of that mission instead of the entire season. However, what will end up happening is all of the upgrades you were holding and stuff like that, since it's Rogue mode, will actually be put in a random chest somewhere on the level that you restart, which means that you'll basically start without all your upgrades again, and you'll have to try and find them in order to get them all back. Which could mean that you have a bit of a hard time at first restarting. And if you don't use your crash coins for that purpose, then at the beginning of the next season, you will turn all of the ones you have in for a boost in salvage, which can give you a little sort of head start in buying upgrades at the beginning of a new season. So that's how the crash coin system works. So yeah, I'm actually not doing very well right now. I've kind of lost my concentration, and I'm going to horribly die soon, I think.
Leave the fighting to the big boys.
But anyway, it's way too much fun, so yeah, I highly recommend it. Please try this out. And unfortunately, I don't believe there's a demo or anything available, but hopefully this has given you a good idea of how the game actually plays. It's very much worth your time, and 20 bucks is a small price to pay for the amount of content that's on offer here. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get to the boss in any kind of reasonable time frame because I'm probably going to die. But still, take my word for it, I suppose. The bosses are awesome. So thanks again, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.